Is there any man here named Shelby? I said, is there any man here named Shelby?
They are considered the most stylish gangsters in the hearts of countless fans. The Shelby family originally belonged to an insignificant gang in Birmingham. Known for hiding razor blades in their caps and using them as weapons during fights, they were called the Peaky Blinders. The Peaky Blinders quickly earned a reputation for their fearless and ruthless nature. Thanks to their daring spirit, they swiftly rose from obscurity to become a top-tier gang in Birmingham's criminal underworld. They controlled local smuggling, alcohol, tobacco, and horse racing businesses. Yet, Tommy Shelby was not satisfied with the status quo. He was determined to lead his family to even greater heights. One day, Tommy rode his horse into a narrow alley and sought out a gypsy witch to cast a spell on a racehorse, ensuring its victory in the competition.
They're doing a magic spell to make her win a race.
The horse's name's Monaghan Boy. You ladies have a bet yourselves, but don't tell anyone else.
Sure enough, the next day, everyone who bet on the horse made a fortune. Tommy continued his scheme, allowing these greedy gamblers to win 2 races in a row. By the 3rd race, when the gamblers had let their guard down and bet their entire fortunes, Tommy manipulated the outcome again. He pocketed all the money from every gambler in Birmingham, only returning the bets placed by his neighbors. However, Aunt Polly of the Shelby family was deeply displeased with Tommy's actions. She believed he was playing with fire, warning him that fixing horse races required the approval of the local gambling kingpin, Billy Kimber. Without Billy's consent, the entire Shelby family would be in grave danger. But Tommy wasn't afraid. He had already devised a plan. Not long ago, during a dockside smuggling operation, the Shelby family accidentally intercepted a shipment of military weapons. The haul included 25 machine guns and 50 semi-automatic rifles, part of a secret shipment meant for the British government's overseas operations. The loss of this shipment enraged Prime Minister Winston Churchill, who secretly dispatched a ruthless inspector to Birmingham to recover the stolen firearms. Tommy privately met with the inspector, proposing a deal. The inspector would act as his protector, helping him expand his territory and safeguard his gambling operations. This was essential, as Billy Kimber had connections within the military. Tommy wanted the inspector to pressure Billy's backers. In return, Tommy promised to hand over the stolen weapons once the dust settled. Though the inspector was reluctant to work with a criminal, Churchill's pressure left him with no choice but to agree. Soon after, Tommy and his older brother Arthur went to the Lee family's territory to intentionally cause trouble. The Lee family retaliated the next day by sending Tommy a bomb, declaring war. But this was exactly what Tommy wanted. Billy Kimber didn't take long to show up at the Shelby family's door, furious that Tommy had manipulated horse racing outcomes without his permission.
Holy shit. I said, is there any man here named Shelby?
Tommy heard the commotion and stepped out of the private room. He dismissed the bar's patrons and brought out a fine bottle of whiskey to entertain Billy. However, Billy didn't take the Shelby family seriously at all. He stood up, angrily scolding Tommy and his crew for breaking the rules.
You fixed the race without my permission. I am Billy Kimber, so I'm gonna have you shot against the post.
After delivering his warning, Billy turned to leave. Tommy quickly stood up to stop him and pulled a bullet, the Lee family's declaration of war, out of his pocket, tossing it to Billy. Tommy knew there was bad blood between Billy and the Lee family, which was why he had intentionally provoked the Lees. It was a calculated move to gain Billy's trust. Tommy expressed his desire to collaborate with Billy to deal with the Lees. But to Billy, who had a private army at his command, the Shelby family's help seemed unnecessary.
Nobody works with me. People work for me. Pick it up, Pikey. Sit down. It's for your ceiling.
At that moment, the Shelby family wasn't strong enough to stand against Billy, so Tommy chose to bide his time and temporarily submit to Billy. To prove their worth, the Shelby family gathered all their members to prepare for an operation, eliminating the Lees who were robbing the racetrack. Before the plan commenced, Tommy attended Billy's gala to ensure that he could negotiate with him after the mission's success. Meanwhile, the Lees continued their reckless plundering at the racetrack, completely unaware of the impending danger.
No more chalking on Billy Kimber's boys.
By order of the Peaky Blinders.
The Shelbys successfully reclaimed the money stolen by the Lees. Afterward, Arthur, the eldest brother, promptly handed the money over to Tommy. This victory served as a powerful demonstration of the Shelby family's strength.
Rescued from the Lee brothers. Your own protection is failing, Mr. Kimber. You contract out your racetrack security for the Peaky Blinders. In return, you give us 5% of the take.
Billy finally agreed to work with Tommy. However, this decision enraged the Lee family.
We're just thinking about our ties.
By the time Tommy and his men returned, the money in their workshop had already been looted by the Lees. Worse yet, the Lees had planted a bomb in Tommy's car. Fortunately, Tommy discovered it in time, averting a potential tragedy. For the safety of his family, Tommy went to the Lee family's territory to negotiate peace. With the help of mediator Jeremiah, Tommy successfully met the head of the Lee family. Tommy didn't waste words, immediately stating his purpose, but his straightforwardness was met with mockery. The Lee patriarch dismissed Tommy as nothing more than a coward, desperate to save his own skin. In response, Tommy presented a revenge bullet engraved with Billy's name. He explained that his role as Billy's security enforcer was merely a ruse to find an opportunity to overthrow him. If the Lee family were to ally with the Peaky Blinders, taking down Billy would be effortless. Though intrigued by the offer, the Lee patriarch hesitated, wary of Tommy's betrayal of his current ally. Determined to secure the Lee family's backing, Tommy made a bold decision. He unilaterally arranged a marriage between his younger brother John and a member of the Lee family. The next morning, the Shelbys arrived, fully armed, at the Lee family's base. John was still clueless about the marriage arrangement, only noticing the strange looks everyone was giving him.
What you staring at me for?
Smile, John. It's a wedding. There's a girl in the Lee family. She needs marrying.
Look,
Listen to me.
I'm not bloody marrying some fucking mushroom bitch.
So if you back out now, there's gonna be one fucking mighty war breaking out.
Without hesitation, John stepped forward confidently and proposed.
Will he do?
He'll do.
After passing the Lee patriarch's test, the bride was brought into the wedding ceremony. When the bride lifted her veil, revealing her stunning beauty, John's grin stretched from ear to ear. Tommy, too, was pleased. Not only had he found a suitable bride for his brother, but he had also secured the alliance with the Lee family, strengthening the Peaky Blinders' position. Seizing the momentum, Tommy decided to join forces with the Lees to eliminate Billy in secret, aiming to monopolize Birmingham's horse betting industry. However, Birmingham's escalating gang activity drew the attention of higher authorities. A new inspector was dispatched to the city. Unbeknownst to most, his real mission was to recover the stolen firearms. To tackle Birmingham's chaos, the new inspector brought along 13 trusted officers. He understood that the local police had long been in collusion with the gangs.
Sunrise tomorrow, they will be on the streets. God help those who stand in our way.
To expedite the investigation into the missing firearms, the new inspector decided to start with the Shelby family. Poor Arthur became the first target and was beaten mercilessly for no apparent reason. Despite the police's use of brutal interrogation methods, Arthur refused to reveal anything. However, the inspector's instincts told him that the Shelby family was deeply connected to the missing firearms, and he wasn't wrong. The truth was that Tommy had initially instructed his men to steal a few motorcycles, but due to a drunken mistake, they ended up in the wrong warehouse and accidentally stole the cache of firearms. Tommy, however, chose to keep this incident a secret and hid the weapons. He realized that this cache of guns could become a valuable bargaining chip for expanding the family's power. But Arthur's interrogation at the hands of the new inspector made Tommy suspect that the secret might already be out. After careful consideration, Tommy decided it was time to confront the inspector directly.
I have what you're looking for. You and your specials will leave my businesses alone from now on. I'm planning an expansion onto the racetracks.
The inspector eventually agreed to Tommy's demands, as his own career would be destroyed if the missing firearms weren't recovered in time. However, Tommy was unaware that news of the firearms had already reached the Irish Republican Army, IRA. Before long, a representative of the IRA approached Tommy, expressing their intent to purchase the weapons. Tommy, without hesitation, refused. After all, these firearms were crucial to his plan to take down Billy. But the representative didn't back down and instead issued a direct threat. If Tommy didn't sell to them, they would ensure the Shelby family disappeared from Birmingham entirely. Faced with this threat, Tommy reluctantly agreed to the deal, setting up a meeting for the exchange. But this was merely a temporary compromise on his part. To eliminate this looming threat, Tommy informed the new inspector of the situation, He reasoned that capturing the IRA leader would earn the inspector recognition and accolades from the king himself. Seeing the mutual benefits of such a plan, Inspector Campbell immediately agreed. To prepare for any potential risks, Tommy instructed Grace to arm herself and take cover behind the bar during the exchange. With everything in place, the IRA leader arrived as scheduled to complete the deal. The police, stationed nearby, chose not to intervene immediately. Campbell's plan was to let both sides weaken each other, ensuring he could reap the benefits without getting directly involved. As the police held back, Tommy had no choice but to proceed with the transaction. But after the IRA representatives received the location of the hidden firearms, they turned on Tommy, pulling a gun on him. Sensing danger, Grace sprang from her hiding spot and fired, killing one of the men. Unbeknownst to Tommy, the woman he loved, Grace was actually an undercover agent working for the inspector. But over time, Grace had grown deeply in love with Tommy, and the life or death situation they had just faced left her shaken to her core. Despite her undercover role, she had never killed anyone before, and the incident left a profound mark on her. Unable to reconcile her actions, Grace decided to resign from her role, but Campbell refused her request, citing the unresolved matter of the missing firearms. Left with no alternative, Grace reluctantly revealed the location of the weapons. She had overheard Arthur mention the hiding place during her time with the Shelbys. Acting on this information, the police conducted a search and successfully recovered the missing firearms at a cemetery. Ecstatic with his success, Campbell wasted no time. With the stolen guns recovered and his reputation secured, he presented a prepared engagement ring and proposed to Grace on the spot. As expected, Grace refused the inspector's proposal without hesitation.
Is it him between us? Is it the beast that dug that grave?
In a fit of rage, the inspector blamed everything on Tommy. Seeking revenge, he revealed Tommy's plan to take over the horse racing business to Billy. Upon hearing this, Billy immediately gathered his entire crew to eliminate the Peaky Blinders. Tommy, however, led his own men to face Billy head-on.
Too late for all that. Now I'm gonna take over this shithole.
Watching his brothers die before him, Tommy took aim at Billy Campbell and pulled the trigger. Seeing this, Billy's men quickly lost their will to fight. From that moment on, the Shelby family became the most powerful criminal organization in Birmingham. But Tommy wasn't satisfied. He knew that in such a chaotic era, survival depended on having immense power. After a meeting with the Peaky Blinders, they decided to expand into the horse racing business in London. To secure a stronghold in London's market, Tommy targeted the largest local gang, the Sabini family. However, as they entered a pub, Sabini's men immediately forced them out.
You're breaking the rules.
Though Tommy only brought 2 men with him, they were undeterred. They were seasoned criminals, after all. The bartender, sensing trouble, opened fire to stop them.
Get out.
Before leaving, Tommy made their intentions clear to the crowd.
We came here to make new friends. Those of you who are last will soon be first. You know where to find us?
With the Peaky Blinders' imposing presence, they quickly made a name for themselves in London, but they underestimated the strength of the Sabini family. When Tommy was alone, Sabini's men found him and attacked. Although Tommy took down 2 of them, they were outnumbered, and soon Tommy was severely beaten. Just as Sabini prepared to kill Tommy, Inspector Campbell and his men arrived in time to save him. Tommy narrowly escaped death. When he awoke, he found himself in a hospital bed. Campbell informed him that, in return for saving his life, Tommy would have to assassinate a general to protect himself. Tommy pretended to agree to the plan. After Campbell left, Tommy fled the hospital. He knew that Sabini could send men to kill him at any moment. This experience taught Tommy that he couldn't face Sabini alone. However, Arthur, furious upon learning about Tommy's assassination attempt, immediately led the Peaky Blinders to Sabini's pub for revenge. They knew it would bring danger, but the Shelby family never bows to anyone.
I'll protect you now. By order of the Peaky Blinders.
Sabini quickly caught wind of the situation. To eliminate the Peaky Blinders, he decided to send professional assassins after Tommy. At this moment, Tommy had just finished attending a horse race, completely unaware that danger was closing in. As they were about to leave, the assassins sent by Sabini pulled out guns and aimed at Tommy. After this incident, Tommy decided to completely take down Sabini. He sought out Inspector Campbell, offering to help him assassinate the general, but only if Campbell would assist in bringing down Sabini. Eager for a promotion, Campbell agreed. 3 days later, Tommy gathered all the members of the Peaky Blinders. The day of the horse race hosted by Sabini had arrived, and Tommy's target would be present. This was undoubtedly the best opportunity for Tommy to strike. Tommy decided to split the team into 2 groups. He would go after the general, knowing that when the gunshots were heard, all the officers would rush to protect the king. This would provide the perfect cover for the Blinders to rob Sabini's money. But the most crucial part was to destroy Sabini's horse racing licenses. Once everything was planned out, the Peaky Blinders successfully infiltrated the racetrack. Tommy spotted the general, but the general was surrounded by his bodyguards, making it impossible for Tommy to make a move. To ensure everything went smoothly, Tommy decided to have his secretary distract the general. After repeated requests from Tommy, Liz reluctantly agreed to help. With the target now in sight, Liz began signaling the general. The experienced general quickly caught on to the signals. Liz led the general to the restroom at the racetrack. After waiting for what felt like an eternity, Tommy appeared, stepping forward without hesitation and shooting the general dead. The sound of the gunshot immediately drew the attention of the officers, who rushed to protect the king. That was the moment the Peaky Blinders had been waiting for. While the officers were distracted, Arthur swiftly led a group to raid all of Sabini's money, and they also succeeded in burning Sabini's horse racing licenses. This effectively meant that Sabini would no longer be able to run his betting operations. Since Inspector Campbell had already promised Tommy not to issue any more legal racing licenses for Sabini, it was a major blow to him. Sabini, enraged, received the news and arrived at the racetrack, but Tommy had been waiting for this moment.
My boys are on the track. They're having a little bonfire. You place too much reliance on the police for your security, Mr. Sabini.
Furious, Sabini threw a bottle of liquor against the wall, shattering it. The officers outside heard the noise and rushed in, but before Tommy could explain, 3 officers grabbed him and immediately took him into custody. It turned out that these officers were all Sabini's men in disguise. Before long, they transported Tommy to a remote area on the outskirts of town, where they had already prepared a grave for him.
So fucking close. Oh, and there's a woman. Nearly got fucking everything!
Tommy walked straight toward the grave, accepting his fate. Just as he was consumed by despair and ready to face death,
at some point in the near future, Mr. Churchill will want to speak to you in person. He has a job for you.
After narrowly escaping death, Tommy, still in shock, stumbled and collapsed to the ground. At that moment, all the frustration he had been holding inside came pouring out, and Tommy, for the first time, shed tears.
Today, this is my fucking wedding day. No sports, no telling fortunes, no racing, no fighting. No fighting. No fucking fighting. Get the fuck in.
After being saved by Churchill, the Peaky Blinders rose from being an insignificant gang to becoming the largest crime syndicate in all of Britain. In just 2 years, their small fortune exceeded the combined wealth of all the aristocrats. However, as their status grew, Tommy found himself more and more trapped. He became increasingly entangled in the power struggles between politicians and revolutionary forces. Even on his wedding day with Grace, he was forced to follow Churchill's orders and conduct trade with the White Russians, selling them armored vehicles and various military supplies. But something about their code seemed off, and Tommy sensed danger. Realizing they were likely Soviet spies sent by the Red Army, Tommy had no choice but to have Arthur kill them on his wedding day. This decision left Arthur disgruntled, as he couldn't understand why Tommy had to involve himself in these dangerous dealings.
The fucking Tory party. If we fucking refuse, they will see to it that we hang for one of our many sins.
Churchill, an outspoken anti-communist, couldn't directly handle certain matters, so he assigned Tommy to represent him in the transaction. But Tommy couldn't afford to make enemies on either side and was forced to navigate this conflict carefully. Soon after, Anna, the Duchess of the White Russians, met with Tommy to discuss the details. The next morning, Tommy went to a junkyard to meet a priest, who handed him a note with an address for someone he needed to meet. That person turned out to be Duke Romanov, a representative of the White Russian royal family. The Duke got straight to the point, pulling a sapphire from his pocket, explaining that it was a down payment for the armored vehicles and arms. The remaining balance would be paid once the transaction was completed. Of course, the wealthy White Russian royal family had everything planned out in advance. Meanwhile, after returning home, Tommy eagerly placed the sparkling sapphire around Grace's neck, always wanting to give her the best of everything. Grace, dressed in her finest attire, joined Tommy at a high society charity gala. When Anna, the Duchess, saw the sapphire on Grace's chest, she made a remark that hinted at something deeper.
Does your wife know that the sapphire she's wearing has been cursed by a gypsy? Nothing on earth would make me wear it.
Though Tommy never believed in superstitions or omens, he became concerned for Grace's safety. So he insisted that Grace remove the sapphire. But just as they did, disaster struck. Tommy had always believed that he and Grace would spend their lives together, but he never expected his wife to die on their wedding day. After burying Grace, Tommy silently swore to make the person responsible for her death pay dearly. After some investigation, Arthur and John finally discovered the mastermind behind the tragedy. It turned out that the culprit was none other than their former rivals, the Changlet family. The Changlets had been provocative towards them in the past, and when John gave a lesson to the son of the family, he used the blade hidden under his hat to blind the man's eye. They never imagined that their actions would lead to such a devastating revenge. Tommy immediately ordered Arthur and the Peaky Blinders to eliminate the Changlet family. But to Tommy's surprise, John actually tried to plead for them. However, Tommy wasn't willing to listen to any arguments. The reason John wanted to intervene was because Mrs. Changlet had once been their teacher, but faced with Tommy's firm stance, both men reluctantly agreed to follow his orders. At this time, the Changlet couple received news and prepared to flee, but they still underestimated the power of the Peaky Blinders. John and Arthur were waiting for them at the crossroads, and when Mrs. Changlet saw them, she had no choice but to beg for their lives. But at this point, they could not defy Tommy's orders. However, out of respect for past ties, John and Arthur ultimately decided to let Mrs. Changlet go. Afterward, they took the elderly Changlet man to an abandoned warehouse. Soon after, Tommy walked in with a box of torture tools. He intended to make Changlet wish he were dead. Arthur couldn't bear to see the Changlet family subjected to inhumane treatment, nor did he want Tommy to transform into a bloodthirsty monster for the sake of revenge. So, he personally killed Mr. Changlet. Seeing the enemy dead before him, Tommy gradually regained his composure. He knew that all of this had happened because he was involved in the underworld. In order to protect his family and never lose anyone close to him again, Tommy decided to clean up the family's reputation and lead them into high society. But things didn't go as planned. Tommy learned through internal sources that the sheriff had uncovered the Shelby family's dark history, and an arrest warrant had already been issued for them. Upon hearing this news, the family members instantly showed fear, as the charges were enough to have them executed 100 times over. In order to save his family, Tommy took all the blame upon himself, pinning the crimes on his own family members. This was the only way he could buy time to save them. Thus, except for Tommy, all the key members of the Peaky Blinders were arrested. The once glorious gang was finally sent to the gallows. The once proud Shelby family now faced death with unprecedented fear. But all they could do at that moment was pray that they would go to heaven after their death. Just as the executioners were preparing to carry out the final act, a police officer holding a pardon order rushed in. The group stood in stunned confusion, but no matter what, they had at least been granted a second chance at life. What they didn't know, however, was that their death sentences were commuted because Tommy had submitted a secret document to the judge which exposed Churchill's collusion with the White Army. Most importantly, the king was also involved. To prevent Tommy from making the document public, the judge pardoned the Shelby family. However, after this incident, the family lost their trust in Tommy. Most of the family members withdrew from the Peaky Blinders, leaving only Michael and Tommy to manage the family business. Tommy thought that everything had come to an end, but an unexpected event occurred again. On Christmas Day, Tommy received a letter of revenge from the Italian mafia. This letter was sent by Luca, the son of Mr. Changlet. 3 years ago, Tommy had killed his father, and now Luca had come to exact revenge for his father's death. Tommy had long heard of the Italian mafia's ruthlessness, and since he had killed Luca's father, Luca would undoubtedly come after his family. To prepare for Luca's retaliation, Tommy immediately called the family members, but John's phone remained unanswered. Seeing this, Tommy had no choice but to send Michael to find John. However, John was dismissive of the Italian mafia, unaware that this ignorance would cost him his life. John was hit by several bullets and fell to the ground, dead on the spot. Michael, lucky enough to avoid fatal wounds, barely survived. By the time Arthur and Tommy received the news, John was already a cold, lifeless corpse. The next day, the entire Shelby family gathered to hold John's funeral. In front of everyone, Arthur, the eldest brother, lit the cart carrying John's body on fire. At that moment, several men in black suits appeared, guns aimed at the gathered crowd. In the nick of time, a gypsy appeared and swiftly took down one of the assassins. Another assassin was killed by a comrade. The Shelby family was startled by the gunshots, but Tommy remained calm. It turned out that this was all a trap set by Tommy. The gypsies were reinforcements Tommy had brought in. However, Luca was nowhere to be seen, indicating that killing Tommy wouldn't be as easy as expected. It turned out that Aunt Polly had betrayed Tommy and sided with the Italian mafia in order to protect her son, Michael. Luca's visit was a message to Polly. If she didn't comply, he could kill her son at any time. After the mafia left, Tommy rushed to the scene, but Michael said that the gun had misfired at the critical moment and he had narrowly escaped death. Tommy knew that Michael was hiding something, but the most important thing now was dealing with Luca. When Tommy learned that Luca's escape route passed through the gypsy territory, he immediately called his ally, Gold, instructing him to ambush Luca on the way. As Luca's vehicle entered gypsy territory, a flipped cart blocked the bridge. The group had no choice but to get out of the car and clear the obstacle. However, the local police officers blocked their path, and the sharp-eyed Luca immediately sensed danger. The group rushed back to the car, preparing to change routes, only to discover that their driver had been slit throat. This incident completely enraged Luca. To track Tommy's whereabouts, he threatened Polly by using Michael's life as leverage, forcing her to tell him Tommy's exact location to protect her son. Polly reluctantly agreed. Sure enough, the next day when Tommy left, Luca followed closely behind in his car. Tommy noticed this and quickly took refuge in a residential area. What Luca didn't know was that this was all part of Tommy's plan. Polly had already informed Tommy of the situation, and he had prepared a gun ahead of time. At that moment, the sheriff arrived and pulled Tommy away. To draw Luca out, Tommy organized a boxing match with his family members. He knew that Luca would likely take the opportunity to target his family. During the match, an opponent in a white shirt kept provoking Arthur. Arthur, with his fiery temper, immediately lost his composure, but luckily, Tommy intervened just in time to stop him. However, the man in white then made a gesture for a one-on-one fight. No matter how much Tommy tried to calm Arthur down, he couldn't contain his anger. When Arthur went backstage, the man was nowhere to be found. Tommy soon arrived backstage and upon hearing gunshots, realized something was wrong. He quickly followed the sound and found Arthur lying in a pool of blood. Tommy knew that the killer had to be Luca. In a fit of rage, Tommy stormed onto the stage, shouting in fury. Arthur's death plunged Tommy into despair. To protect his family's bloodline, Tommy decided to make a concession to Luca. Luca presented a stack of documents, which were all the assets of the Shelby family. He demanded that Tommy transfer the property to the name of the Shanglet family.
Get on your fucking knees.
Faced with Luca's humiliation, Tommy had no choice but to comply. However, Tommy had already bribed all of Luca's men. When Luca saw his own men betraying him, he immediately drew his gun. After a fierce close-quarters struggle, Luca was ultimately overpowered by Tommy. At that moment, Arthur, who was thought to have died, walked into the room. It turned out that Arthur had not died at all. Tommy had staged the entire scene to make Luca lower his guard. With Arthur pulling the trigger, Luca met the same fate as his father, dying at the hands of Arthur's gun.